Hi, I'm Darren Cox and we're here at the wonderful Larford Lakes Complex to catch loads and loads of skimmers and carp. We've had a little quick go and it's good already. What I want to talk to you about more importantly is what I class as my 3 must-have mixes. I think with all my fish meal fishing, that covers things like natural waters for bream and carp and fish that like fish meal, and down to commercial fisheries like this where fish meal is a must-have. My 3 mixes, this is all I like to use, and they cover all my purposes. So let me go through them very quickly with you. There you go, the first one, Green Supreme from Mainline. This is a fantastic mix, a real classic mix. It's a green colour. This kind of fishery has and lots of these fisheries, they have a green tinge in the water, and it's a fact that green is good. Green ground bait works on places like this. Green Supreme has got that special formula inside it. I don't even know what's in it, but it catches a lot of fish. Just let me come on to the next one very quickly to show you. Number 2, Sweet Marine. This is probably the one I use more than anything, but this suits my actual style of fishing. It's a much darker ground bait, and it's got a lot of halibut pellet in it, which means that it's very strong. The darkness is good when you've got clear water or slightly less colour in the water. It's great for big open natural waters where you're catching lots of bream. It's great for big waters where the water's clear, and carp, things like that. It's got lots of food in it, and it's a great ground bait. So that's my number 2. Number 3, Mainline Margin mix. This is a completely different ground bait to most of the ground baits that you'll use for your fishing. This is what I call a hearty mix. It's a proper mix. There's loads of feed content in it. There's loads of particles. And what you'll find is you have to mix this one differently. And I'll come on to this a little bit later on and show you exactly how I mix it. The mixing process of these 3 ground baits is very different, and they're easy to mix, but you need to know how to mix each one to get the benefits out of them. You can use them in so many different ways if you understand how the consistency of these ground bait works. So let me just show you. First of all, Green Supreme. This is a very fine ground bait. It's got lots of tiny little particles in it that will take water in very nicely. What I tend to do with this, and most of my ground baits first of all, is I'll put them in a bucket. You can drill them or you can mix them by hand, but the most important thing, whatever you're doing, whether drilling or by hand, is you actually apply the water a small amount at a time. So what I do, on a bag of this, for example, I'll fill up one of these with water, and I'll put probably 1/3 of this tub of water into a full bag mix. If you're only mixing half a bag, then just reduce it down. What you have to remember with these ground baits, and all ground baits, is if you put the right amount at the start, you can always add a little bit more, but you can never take the water out. Once the water's in and the ground bait absorbs it, if you've mixed it too wet, then that's how you've got to fish with it. But it's really easy, and I tend to put the water in 1 or 2 or even 3 times. So I put a little and often, mix it by hand or drill it. I like to drill it, but I don't like to drill on the bank. It's just one of my phobias I've got. I'm a bit funny like that. So I often mix my ground bait at home, and I think it's great if you have time to mix it at home, because it does mean that you can spend time on it and get the mix right. So first of all, you put the water into the ground bait, a little bit at the start. Then what I'll do is I'll drill it, I'll mix it by hand, and then I'll walk away from it and just leave it alone and walk away. I want that ground bait to absorb every single bit of that moisture that I've just put into it. What I've done with the drill or the movement by hand is I've tried to disperse the water as much as I can around the particles, around the tiny crumbs and the bits of food and everything that's in there. I want it to suck the water in, and so I have to leave it alone. When I leave it alone, it'll do the job. When I go back to it, it'll look like it's dried and gone a bit cakey. That's when the whisk comes in. Give it another drill with the whisk, and then what I can do is I can pick it up and feel the consistency. Does it feel right? Can I lightly squeeze a ball and still spread that ball out in my hand so that all the particles are still separate. What I don't want it to do, I don't want it to stick and be claggy, because what that can do, it can actually feed the fish and they become more preoccupied with the ground bait than the particles that you put in and the particles on the hook. And that for me is really, really important. Then if it needs more water, put a bit more water in, whiz it up again and walk away. And you just repeat the process until you have it exactly how you want it. And for me, the Green Supreme takes in the water fantastically. It just does the job for you. It's very, very easy to mix as long as you don't put too much water in. And as with most ground baits, you can do so much with it. I'll come on a little bit later on exactly what we can use it for, but this is a great mix for me, you know, for putting in feeders, for mixing together with the sweet marine. I love the sweet marines together. That makes a fantastic mix. But let me come on to the sweet marine now. Again, this is a totally different ground bait to the Green Supreme. You can see it's much darker. It's got a lot more oily particles in it, like fish oils, like halibut pellets, things like that. So it takes a lot longer to absorb the water, and that's what you've got to be mindful of. You repeat the process again, you put the water in, you drill the mix, you walk away, leave it alone, and then go back to it and look to see if it needs any more water. And often with the sweet marine, it doesn't need as much water as something like Green Supreme because of the oiliness in it. So you've got to be very careful, drill it again and put a little bit more ground bait in. But it's just all about understanding your ground baits. And one of the important points to make is, if you flip about and use lots of different ground baits that you don't know, you never really get to understand its properties. And the properties are so important, because if you're looking at your ground bait and go, it needs a little bit more water in it, whilst you're fishing, you can just put a bit of water in, whiz it round, and you go, I've got it right now. So you can get those consistencies right. Until you understand the properties of the ground baits you use, you can't be that versatile in your fishing position. So there's two ground baits already, really good. These are my go-tos, they really are, and I often mix them together and they cover most of my fishing. If I'm fishing in winter and I want a nice fluffy mix, but I want a darker mix, I put those two together, put them together and actually make a lovely ground bait. I'll whiz them together in basically with a drill, and they look absolutely superb. So just coming on to the final mix, and it's so different, this mix, to most of the ground baits you'll use. It's a proper hearty mix, as I call it. This is the margin mix, and this is the one that I will use down the edge. This is the one where I'll put it on a pole line where I'm expecting to catch a lot of fish. This will feed the fish. There's lots and lots of particles in there, and it mixes totally different, so it's very important to mix this carefully. It takes in a lot of water, but if you put a lot of water in it straight away, it won't respond correctly. So you've got to feed it the water little and often in the same way. There's lots and lots of particles, lots of hemp. Again, there's lots of pellets and seeds and things like that. And these are quite hard, and you'll see that they take longer to absorb in the water. So you've got to feed them that water gently, but they will take it in. And a lot of the time when I'm fishing close in on the margins, with these particles, if I can get the right amount of water into these particles, they'll stay on the bottom. This ground bait's a nice heavy mix. You can put it in with lots of water in it, drop it in the water, it goes down, it's on the bottom, and when these big fish come over in the margins, you want them on the bottom. You don't want bait kicking up, you don't want the fish spinning around in your peg and giving you liners. It's this kind of difference that catches a lot of fish. And if you understand, again, the property of this ground bait in the same way as you understand the other two, honestly, you can't go wrong. They're three fantastic mixes, and my go-to mixes for pretty much all my commercial fisheries.